but I'll be a little bit more pointed than that. I believe our Commander-in-Chief said that the United States would never go to war against a Muslim country. I also believe that Israel, for your own survival, has just a very limited time, a limited window to decide what you will do before you're vaporized by Iran, as they have promised. Considering our current posture in the United States, our military strength, our fighting 2 wars, seems like your hands are tied instead of, in your decision to even try and take on Iran militarily at this time, or within the very short term. Thank you.
Well, again, I'm not going to relate to the issue of the Democratic Party as a partisan issue. I know I could, and I could say a number of things that would be very well received by this particular community. But I do want to say something very important. I do, because it's the second question that's related to this, and I think it's important that we all recognize this, because it's these subtleties that will make or break not the relationship between America and Israel. That relationship is strong, but will make or break American policy vis-a-vis Israel in the coming decade or 2. I don't agree, and I don't believe that the majority of the leadership of the Democratic Party are not friends of Israel. And I said that already. I do agree there is a danger that the radical elements of the Democratic Party, the radical elements of the radical left in America, who have made inroads into the traditional Democratic Party that I grew up knowing, the party of Henry Scoop Jackson, as well as Joe Lieberman, who was mentioned, I believe that is a danger, and from this stage I'm happy to acknowledge that danger. But if we demonize and push to the side the current leadership of the Democratic Party, people like Hillary Clinton or Nancy Pelosi or President Obama, with whom we disagree vociferously on policies vis-a-vis Israel, the Middle East, Iran, Afghanistan, and what have you, we endanger our ability to affect those policies. And my choice is to very specifically and explicitly insist, and this is what I ask you to do as citizens of the United States, to insist that the Democratic leadership reevaluate the basis on which they make policy with regard to Iran, or even Iraq, or Saudi Arabia, or obviously Israel, the Palestinians, the Lebanese, and Syrians, and what have you. So we agree that the policy may be misguided, but to demonize President Obama as not a friend of Israel doesn't help us to improve that policy. Let me say one last thing about Iran. Let there be no mistake. I am an Israeli citizen. I am not a representative of the government. That gives me freedom to say the following. Israel and the government of Israel will not allow the radical regime in power in Iran to get hold of and develop weapons of mass destruction. Full stop. I don't say that looking for applause. I don't say that because I'm being macho. When I talk about this period and our understanding of history, when somebody else mentioned the threats that Iran has made against the state of Israel, no responsible government in Israel will allow that to happen. And that means a number of things. First of all, it's a very simple calculation. I don't mean to be morbid, but we know very well that a nuclear device, even a small one, blown up off the coast of Tel Aviv would take somewhere between 250,000 to 500,000 lives and casualties. It might well decimate the economic capacity of Israel to function as a state. It wouldn't kill every individual or maim every individual in the state, but it might well spell the end of the state of Israel as we know it. What's the word? Opposite of that, or the possible. I'm sorry, living in Israel for 25 years, you lose your English vocabulary sometimes.
Alternative.
Sorry?
Alternative.
Alternative, thank you. That's the word. Thank you for your patience. The alternative to that, while very unpleasant, It could include tens of thousands of casualties in the Iranian and the Iranian and the Israeli side. Most estimates agree that Israel has the capacity, as does America, to militarily take out the 7 most important sites in Iran that are integral to their development of nuclear weapons capability. Most of those sites are not in population centers. It would most probably entail the death of forces that Israel would have to send in on the ground, because this could not be done in these hardened installations just by the air. And these soldiers include my son and my daughter, as well as my friends and neighbors and their children. And we don't take this lightly, nor do we take the possibility of thousands, 5,000 or 7,000 is the estimate, potential casualties on the Iranian side. We assume in our calculations that in such a situation where Israel were to attack Iran, that both Syria, perhaps certainly Hezbollah and Hamas, would rain missiles down in our population centers. We anticipate casualties in the realm, in the best case scenario is a few hundred, and the worst case scenario a few thousand, up to 10 or 20,000 casualties. Guess what? We talked earlier about numbers and comparing numbers. There is no comparison between 10 or 20,000 casualties or injured on both sides as a result of a military attack by Israel on Iranian nuclear facilities. There's no comparison between that and upwards of 500,000 dead or injured and the possible decimation of the state of Israel. So I say again, it won't happen even if in a worst case scenario Israel's relations with America are ruptured, because the government and the leadership of Israel will not allow such an eventuality to take place. I'm sorry to say.
I promise we have three quick questions.
I promised 3 quick answers. I apologize.
You've actually answered my question, and I take your last comments to say that Israel will protect their people, and your people should know that the American people will come to your aid when that happens.
Would you comment briefly on Helen Thomas and her apologists in the world?
I will comment briefly. I regret to say, as an American who grew up in Washington, in Menlo Park here, in San Francisco, who studied at UC Berkeley, and I have to mention, Richard, since you didn't, as an American who's a direct descendant of one of the first Jewish families who came to these shores in 1730, as a direct descendant of a rabbi named Gershom Mendesatius, who was the representative of the Jewish community at the inauguration of President George Washington. I have to say that it pains me greatly that there still remains a trend of anti-Semitism within the American society. Now, unfortunately, what I want to share with you briefly is that this anti-Semitism is no longer recognizable. I think we all agree, and thankfully and proudly can agree, just as the Civil Rights Movement made racism in America politically unacceptable. It's unacceptable in almost all circles in America to talk about Jews as the dirty Jew or the greedy Jew, or to delegitimize Judaism as religion, or to suggest that Jews control the world, or the Jews are the devil, or the Jews are evil. All this traditional anti-Semitism that no longer is extant here in America. Unfortunately, there is a new anti-Semitism, which is exactly what was represented by Helen Thomas, which is unfortunately pervasive in the circles within which Helen Thomas moves, both the media and the academic and intellectual elite of the country. And that new anti-Semitism is represented by the demonization of Israel, the demonization of Israel, the delegitimization of Israel, the holding of Israel to a double standard, the treating of Israel as, forgive me for the phrase, the Jew among the nations. It's no longer politically correct to refer to the Jew as the source of evil in the world, or Judaism as a not legitimate religion, but it is politically correct to refer to Israel as the source of evil, certainly in the Middle East, if not the world, as the greatest violator of human rights in the world, as if Sudan or China or Burma or Saudi Arabia didn't exist. And it is politically correct